Good. Hello. Hi. By the way, Angel, the
Let's turn that off
yes.
until you start.
Oh, yeah, it's inside actually. Yes.
I got it.
Yeah.
So I'll start with this one. Thank you very much for coming. And you already know the title of the talk. My lab is called Assist Lab, which is assistive solution, socio-technical solution for individual with special need through technology, and that's what our mission. And as Angel mentioned, the whole purpose of everybody that works in the lab is kind of trying to understand how we can make health and well-being related activities more enjoyable through design and interactivity. How to make it more interactive so that it's less boring, it's less repetitive, or it's less perceived to be repetitive and boring. And the way I usually describe that is through an example. So an example that I would take is if you need a leg because you lose your leg. Of course, you could have this type of leg. It's perfectly functional. You can walk with it, and it's you know, there is nothing wrong with this leg. However, it would be better if you could have this leg, right? In case you don't know, this is Amy Mullin, and that's Hugh Her. And Amy is a double amputee, but also she won 2 gold medals in sprint. Because she has the leg that would help her to run. And that's kind of the parallel that I usually start by introducing what we are doing. No, we're not doing those legs, just to be very clear, right? It's just an kind of a comparable between the leg on the right and the leg on the left. What we do, however, is we do things such as, well, if you happen to have some sort of weight issue, and you are teenagers, you either want to stay on the couch and play video games morning to evening. That would be very comfortable. Or sometimes you do want to get out there and try to do some exercise to lose weight. Of course, you can do it in a treadmill. It's boring, it's repetitive, it's, you don't have a lot of fun, probably. Well, some of you do, but many of us don't really have a lot of fun. Or what you could do is you could play detective. You could actually be somebody who can speak with animals, and suddenly the animals are all being kidnapped by Dr. Evil. That's Dr. Evil. And then what do? Well, you have guardian animals that are actually very closely related to your personality. If you're a happy person, then your guardian animals is a sea otter. If you are very neurotic, your guardian animal is a beetle. and by doing that, you could then be told that you need to run, you need to jump, you need to walk in order to find those animals that are being kidnapped by Dr. Evil. This is a project that was funded by National Science Foundation, my first National Foundation grant when I arrived here, actually, many years ago, probably 10 years ago now, or 8 years ago. And that's what I meant by, you know, of course the treadmill is fully functional. It's just a bit boring, a bit repetitive. Well, if you have to run and jump in order to save the animals, maybe it's less boring and more playful. Or another example, if you are about to give birth, of course you could read those stack of books and watch video after video after video. It works. It actually perfectly functional, reading books. Or you could actually play a game. This is a game that was actually funded by CITRIS. It's a game in collaboration with UC San Francisco Nursing and Midwifery Department. And what we do is we simulated a woman in labor, and there are different scenarios that you have to help. And by playing through the games, you are told of the different action and their effect to the pain that the woman experienced. Another example, if you have cleft, like this very pretty little girl has, and your cleft has been corrected through surgery, because up to this point, you have what is called compensation when you try to speak with air gap in your palate. After the surgery, the old habit dies hard, and you have to try to speak now again without thinking that you have a gap in your mouth. And it's very hard. It's years and years of practice. And of course, you could do it through this book. This book will then tell you how to do it and tell you how to say certain words, and somebody will even guide you through the way that you should say things. Or you can play a game. This is a game, this is a project funded by National Science Foundation only recently, a year or two ago. And in this game, there are these little characters called the mix. And the mix live in the perfect world until a storm came and flew them into our world. And now suddenly you have to help the mix to go back to their perfect world, where the weather is always perfect and there's no storm like here. And you have to help the mix with your voice. And that's the game that we developed in collaboration with UC Davis Medical Center. There's a plastic surgeon and there is a speech pathologist that we work with. So that's what I meant by, can we make health and well-being and rehabilitation activities more interactive, more playful, and more fun? So, how do we do that? How do our lab do that? Well, a lot of tricks, a lot of things that we do. The first is get together an interdisciplinary team. So, this is a kind of game. We call it a game. This is a game that, and I apologize for the super dense picture. This was the picture that shows up in the, this was funded by National Science Foundation Smart and Connected Health. And basically what happened is that once you recover from stroke, you have to go home after you are considered no longer in threatening condition. You're supposed to go home and exercise at home. And usually you have a caregivers, it could be your wife or husband or daughter or sister, brother, and so on. And they're going to try to help you to do the exercises because many of the exercises need another person to help you with the exercises. The problem, and some of you who have been to physical therapists might be able to relate to that, is that it's easy to remember it in the therapist's office. However, once you go home, you kind of forgot, like, oh, do I have to bend this way? Do I have to help this way? And stuff like that. So what we do is we build a mobile avatar that are trying to show the caregivers where to hold the patient, how much pressure for any exercises that require the caregivers to put pressure. And we even give them some indication of which area needs more pressure and less pressure. The problem is that for the poses, it's easier for people to understand. We actually use Kinect to also monitor whether the person, the caregiver, has done the correct posture in supporting the patient. For pressure, it's slightly more difficult. So for that, what we do is we actually install an electronic tattoo. It's a sticker. And in that sticker, there are pressure sensors. So it can actually give you feedback whether you have applied the right pressure, the right muscle activity or not. As you can imagine, this is a very interdisciplinary project. My work is all on the user interface and the user side, but we have the tattoo guy, Todd Coleman from UC San Diego. He has developed this electronic tattoo for many, many, many years and for many different applications, including detecting the health of the fetus. For our purpose, it's to detect how much pressure the person is applying and a variety of things. So interdisciplinarity is really, really key. The second thing How do we do that? Well, we actually borrow very established practice. If we are to develop something playful for stroke rehabilitation, maybe we should look into what are the established practice for stroke rehabilitation. So in this movie, what we do is we are using virtual reality to perform stroke rehabilitation. I don't know if you noticed that this lady, one of the arm is not moving. Only one arm is moving. And the reason only one arm is moving is because we designed the game so that the participant get more reward if they're only using one arm. It's an established technique which is called constraint-induced therapy. In a constraint-induced therapy, you're supposed to use your weak arm and refrain from using your strong arm. And if you, the way that we do it is that you get punished in your game if you use your strong arm. Well, it's not a punishment, you just get less reward. That's how the game look like. It's called Project Starcatcher. And we also designed something which is called Project Butterfly. For that, we are actually also translating the game reward to follow another established practice, which is called the mirror therapy. In the mirror therapy, you have to mirror the weak arm and the strong arm. And the butterfly can only be caught if you are using mirrored arms. So that's what I mean by borrowing from an established therapy techniques. Second thing, what do we do? How do we do it? A lot of iteration. A lot of iteration. This is iteration number 1 on the clef game. Some of you who has been here for a little longer would have seen this one because we did crowd funding. We got what we asked for through the crowdfunding, not to the level as the the beehive that raised $8 million. No, we only asked for like 10,000. We did get it. So, but this is like the first iteration. And then we realized that, well, this is great. It's a very nice story. If you haven't played it, you should play it. It's a great story of this little slug. And this little slug needs to get out and cross the bridge. And so you have to actually say the word, put on boots, open the door, wear a hat, cross the bridge, and stuff like that. All of the sentences are given to us by the speech pathologist. And then we realized some of these children got really bored because the game's super long. So we designed mini games that only require one word at a time. Purse, Bob, cat. and then they were happier. And then after that, they, then we have to iterate again that we need also sentences. So we then created another version where the users were saying sentences. And then after that, we go back into saying word again, fire. But this time, there is a story that is very involving. This is the story, if you remember, of the mix that need to be saved and put to be sent back to their perfect world. And then finally, this is the last iteration, is that we have very clear instruction where the users would have to say the word, move the rock, and the users are then given the feedback of how much progress or how close they are to the non-clef speech through this, what is called the speechometer. As you can see, a lot of iteration, years of work. What else do we do? Well, we directly involve users. This is somebody at Hope Services that are working with us, and she has been really great. Her name is Allison. I asked if it's okay for me to introduce her, and she said, yes, do you want me to come? And I wish she could come. But we work very closely with the users. We listen to what they want. We actually listen to their ideas. When Allison was the one who came up with the ideas of having the speechometer actually, because he said, well, I need to know how close I am to my target sentences. And so the rest, if you are curious, if you're more of a more technical person, this is a software called Boris. It automatically allows us to mark emotion. As you can see, angry, frustrated, and the reason we do that is so that we can immediately tailor the encouragement. If somebody's frustrated, what do we encourage them with? If somebody is angry, what do we encourage them with, and stuff like that. So, as I mentioned, it's great if we could listen to users. That's why when Angel introduced me, I literally said the word user-centered design is very important, because everything that we do, we really, really try to listen to users' idea. Of course, it's great if the users are also interested in really helping us to build the game, right?
I have amblyopia, which is the most common neurological eye disorder.
Hi, Ocean.
It's when you have drastically weaker vision in one eye, and oftentimes this turns into a lazy eye, or it can start off as a lazy eye. Many times it contributes to learning disabilities. So initially I started this project thinking I wanted a cheap and easily accessible way for amblyobes to get virtual reality video game therapy. I wanted to create a video game which digitally dimmed one of the eyes, and it would force the eyes to work together. There had already been people who had done that, but the problem with the video games is the video games they had released were designed by researchers, not video game designers, and therefore weren't very entertaining and didn't have that mainstream appeal that most video games have. My team and I then came up with the idea to put the physical lens on a virtual reality system and compare the results of the physical lens versus a digital one. With this physical lens on the system, a user could potentially get just as effective therapy while playing one of the hundreds of thousands of games available on smartphones.
So that's how we do that, right? We listen to users, we listen to their ideas, and then it's great if they can develop it as well, as Ocean does. The other thing that we found is that a lot of time what we build has to be used by somebody that we cannot geographically even go to. Our clef games are used a lot in Central Valley, in a place that don't always have internet. Our childbirth game is used with the Homeless Prenatal Project. So these are homeless expecting parents. So sometimes we cannot get to. And what we learn is that we really need the system to be robust and reliable, real time, and doesn't feel like, you know, it's lagging, right? So
blue, yellow, green, red.
As you can see, you know, it's something simple, but if somebody needs to say those colors, which is one of the exercises that were prescribed to children after cleft surgery, then the game has to be robust, it has to be reliable. If somebody said blue and the green bar topples, that's not very helpful. Well, especially because the cat would fall. But it also has to be operated by themselves, right? I mean, so they don't have to wait for us. This is another example. Okay, I'm so sorry for the loudness. This looks like a Tetris game. It is a Tetris game. But I'll speak after this loudness is gone. Right, so that is very loud, yes. So that game, which is a Tetris game, it's actually a therapy tool for somebody with a condition which is called the neurogenic speech disorder. In this condition, people cannot maintain very well the loudness of their voice, and they can either speak very loud or very soft, and they just cannot control it very well. One of the therapies that they do is actually they were asked to hum and sustain the hum at a certain loudness. And it's extremely, of course, tedious and boring. So we created the game actually as a way, well, there are two purposes of creating the game. One is for the person with neurogenic speech disorder to hopefully play the game and feel less bored when they have to hum constantly. But actually, we use the score of the Tetris game for the speech pathologists to see how many of humming up and humming down they manage to do and maintain. I don't know if you could see it. In order to move the block from the first column to the last column, you actually has to say, and it's that sustaining the hum is the essence of this humming therapy. The next one, how do we do that? Well, this is what I call the right design with the right tool. And what I meant by that is we tried not to reinvent the wheel. And some people would say we are stealing from another field. But what we do is that whenever we could, we would use tools that are out there, because our purpose is to create games that are helping in therapy, that are playful, that are entertaining. So if we could shortcut the development time of the game by borrowing tools that are out there, then we should do that. So these are the mix that you by now you already are very familiar. The mix display different emotion because we are actually also trying to assess whether theoretically there is a correlation between the mix that the users feel more closely related to and the type of emotions that they're displaying. Now, in order to create this different emotion, we actually use, this is the Adobe character animation. The way it works is that it has, it uses your webcam, and then it will exaggerate your emotion. So if you frown, then the mic will frown even deeper than you frown. But by doing that, we actually cut down in the development of the characters that display emotion for the game. So, what did we learn so far? What we learned is that, as you have heard, most of the projects that we do are interdisciplinary work. We could not have done it by ourselves. I'm just a game designer. I don't know anything about medical field. I do not know anything about psychology. I do not know how to work with very young children and understand the developmental stage that they are in that might require different type of game design. Interdisciplinary collaboration has allowed me to answer questions that are more complex than I could have answered myself. But communication mismatch often happen. One of the examples that I usually like to give was we have a project in collaboration with UC Davis Nursing Department a while ago that was also funded by CITRIS. We were developing a robot that can be remotely driven by family members who are afraid of their parents or grandparents that live alone, otherwise healthy, but sometimes don't pick up the phone, and they don't know what's going on. So we are developing this robot, which basically we hack a Roomba, and this robot, this Roomba has a two-way microphone and a two-way camera, so you can talk to each other and you can steer it over the internet. And then our nursing department collaborators said, this is a great thing, but I have a request. And I said, go ahead, tell me your request. He said, well, what I am concerned is, what if that robot find the older person flat on the ground and not moving? Can you please design an arm out of this Roomba that would be able to feel the pulse of the person? So I said, it's not going to happen. So there is sometimes a communication mismatch because we're so different in our discipline. And timeline too. When we are working with the doctors that work with cleft children, their timeline is 7 years. That's how long it takes them to do speech therapy. Our timeline is 2 months, right? Because after 2 months we have to report something. So there are problem, but it's still worth it. We learned that it is possible to make therapy fun, to make therapy to be more engaging. However, we need to be very, 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 appealing. Visual design is very important. Interaction flow is very important. And it's just something that I wasn't prepared a long time ago. Bringing games to the end users have a lot of appeals to us. It reveals many design challenges. It reveals many technical challenges. So one of the examples was that we work very closely with Hope Services, this organization that provide job skills to people with developmental disabilities, and we build them mobile app that help with recognizing numbers, adding currencies, and stuff like that, only to find out that actually the problem wasn't that they don't understand numbers or currency. The problem is that their fine motor control was not realistic. So they cannot actually tap on an iPad that has the job skill training module. So bringing it to them revealed that design challenges, and we were really, really glad that we bring it to them earlier. Finally, another thing that we realize is that, yes, money is important, of course, but it should never be the main drive for doing this. And what I meant is, I want to give you an example, and I call it compassion. So there's a story behind what I'm going to show you. So I was spending summer, my very first summer at UC Santa Cruz in Japan. And it was a government research agency that is extremely well funded by the Japanese government. And before I came there, I had developed a drawing game for children with very low cognitive ability. It's a very simple drawing game, and it's a tabletop drawing game. And we brought it to this school for special needs, where the children there were learning very basic skills. And that day was the parents' children's day. So the parents of the children were there. And I distributed the drawing games on the predecessor of iPads. I don't even remember what it was. It was a touch screen that is nothing like an iPad. And the children started drawing. And many of them were unable to draw. So they don't really produce a really, really nice thing. And I have a translator because I don't speak Japanese, not beyond ordering sushi and sake. So this translator was faithfully translating everything that the children and the parents and the teachers were saying. So one mother actually was sitting next to the child, and the mother said, "This is such a beautiful painting that you make." And it wasn't. And the child looked at the mother and said, "I know I'm stupid, but do you think I'm idiot enough that I don't realize that my painting is up?" Was literally the sentence, and my heart sank. And I was thinking, this is ridiculous. Why am I developing this drawing game that is very difficult to create something nice? I can do it. I just never thought of doing that. So I modified the drawing game. Very simple modification. In this drawing game, it's a kaleidoscope, and it worked in this way, that wherever you draw, you are going to mirror it 8 times, because it's a kaleidoscope. The faster you move, the bigger the bubbles. The slower you move, the smaller the bubble, that it could even look like a line. It will start from one side of the color wheel, and it move across the color wheel and go back after a certain number of bubbles. It's extremely simple to build. right? If you are all, if you're here are coders, you would immediately say like, oh yeah, I could develop this. This is super easy. So I handed this modified game. It took me a day to modify, and I go back to that school of special needs. And I teach the kids how to do it. It's very simple. You just randomly move your fingers on this touch screen. That's pretty much what I told them to do. So this is what those children were able to do. These are the drawings. That it was so beautiful, and not because I'm proud of the game that I built. No, it's just so beautiful that we actually managed to have it exhibited at a museum in Tokyo. The paintings that were made by the children. And my host for that summer was forever thankful for the exposure to the work that they do, that until today, this summer, he funded a summer internship for an undergraduate researcher that works in my lab. And he has been funding many of my students. That's what I mean by funding is important, but if you're passionate about it, money will come. And that's the end of my talk.
Wonderful talk, Shri. These are so beautiful.
It's beautiful.
This will be the only way I'm ever an artist.
I can give you a game.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Then my mom will be proud. No. Well, I have a few questions just sort of off the bat, but if anyone in the audience has any questions, this mic moves, or you can project. But so I have a question.
Sure.
Shri, I'm so interested to find, how did you first find yourself drawn into this field? Like, how does one get here?
Oh, wow, that's a 1 hour answer.
Okay.
The short answer is, when I finished my undergraduate, I decided that earning big salary is important. So I work in the oil field. I was usually the only female field engineer in the field. It's either in the middle of the jungle or in the middle of the sea. Very entertaining when you are really young. After a while, however, you realize you're losing your humanities working in the oil field. Corruption, everything else, that the worst that some humans could do, you see it. However, the other thing that I saw was that I saw that bad interface really kills, like literally. So that's when I decided that I wanted to go back to grad school. I decided what I want to do is I want to design a good user interface that when you are sleepy, when you are tired, when you don't speak English, you could use it. And so I did that.
Wow.
And then I realized that actually when I started working with the aging population, actually, I realized that I really enjoyed working with people who are not the mainstream population. I really feel that there is like immediate gratification there of working and seeing their faces, that seeing how happy they are. They're usually very honest. If they don't like it, they're going to say, I don't like it, I don't want to use this. And that's how I work with the aging population for my PhD first, and then after that with blind person, with children with autism, and then it's just
Wow.
it just roll on.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Does anyone in the audience want to venture a question? Here, we'll take it up here. Don't worry, I saw you. I'll come back for you.
Yeah, my name is Vanessa. So seeing that in this field you encounter a lot of setbacks, and there are times when you're working so many hours on a project, or days, months, years. So I wanted to ask you, when you encounter those problems and difficulties, how you find the motivation to continue and press on in your projects.
Well, if you really believe that what you're doing is helpful, by not being able to develop that system that you believe is helpful, yeah, you are frustrated, you're losing sleep. But imagine somebody is blind who is waiting for your system to finish. Or the parents of a child with autism that is waiting for that game, that module that would hopefully help their child. I think if you kind of try to put it in balance, losing sleep, not being able to get out of the house, then you could kind of find that motivation. And trust me, like if you meet with them, you meet with their parents and their family, everything else is pale in comparison. It really is.
Would you mind saying your name first?
I'm Avery. As you know me, Sri.
Yes, I know you.
I'm just asking, what would their pictures look like if they draw it with a pencil and kind of draw like very slowly, or try to draw like with something that on like with the app on a phone or something that you just tap a color, tap a thing, and just play something, and then what if you just did that? What do you think that look like?
Excellent question. I think it would look interesting. I think if you choose a color and then you tap into a touch screen, you would produce a different type of picture. One thing definitely that you will not produce with that app is you would not produce something that is symmetrical, right? And unfortunately, for a lot of people, symmetry looks nicer than non-symmetrical, unless you are really into like abstract painting or something. Yeah, so that would be what it would look like probably.
And so I have one more question,
Yeah.
unless anyone from the audience has one. Any burning questions? Okay, I have one. What are you working on now? And how can our students maybe get involved in this type of research? Or what are some ways that students here at UCSC can start finding avenues into getting involved?
Right. What do I work on? I have 7 PhD students and like, I don't remember, 30, 40 undergraduate students. So it's,
Oh my
it's
God.
slightly difficult to answer. Okay. We have document formatting for blind authors. We have the virtual reality system for a variety of application, including social emotional training tool for people with autistic spectrum disorder. We have, in collaboration with robotic faculty, wearable soft robots for physical rehab. We have bi-dextrous glove for people with hypertonic muscles. So, for example, if you have cerebral palsy, sometimes you cannot relax your palm. You have this pose, and this glove is supposed to relax you. We have another tangible squeezy toy that is for, again, finger therapy for stroke rehab. We have, I start running out of, and I'm sure my student will be very upset at me. We have a cognitive testing tool for older adults with dementia that takes into account the lighting, the noise, whether people are talking around them, their mood and emotion, and normalize the score of the cognitive testing based on those disturbances. A variety of things. We have public transport support for people who are blind and with cognitive impairment that try to tell you which bus is coming, which stop you should take, what happened if you miss your stop. So a variety of projects. If you would like to be involved, I think the best is email me. I mean, that, I don't know how else. And then I'll like usually make you come to the lab meeting, listen to everybody's progress, and then join the group or come up with your own idea, like what Ocean does.
Any final questions?
Hi, Sri. My name is Saumya, and can you tell us more about your work that you did in the Czech Republic regarding the humming mouse, I believe?
So you've seen the humming Tetris. That was also part of the work that we did. So the idea is that if you have a combined or impairment,
Any final questions from the audience? Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you all so much for being here tonight. This was really wonderful, and we look forward to more. Thank you again so much.